Remember the goose that laid the golden egg? That story was all about greed and how greed can turn to nothing. Washington is a city ruled by greed. 535 people came to Washington to serve their country. When they arrived, they were like most other Americans. These people each belonged to one of three organizations. Then a strange thing happened. They all became wealthy. And like all Nuevo rich, they thought it was because they were special. They could hardly remember their humble beginnings. Two of the groups became very prominent and represent almost 95% of the Congress. Slowly at first, bad things began to happen. Soon each of these groups forgot why they were there. Instead of working on the problems of America, they set up complicated systems to ensure that only people that agreed with their philosophy could run for election. Ignoring the rules of history and what made this country great, they sought to ensure less diversity. They passed laws that created a new class of citizens. If you were in Europe, they would be called royalty. First, they decided that since they were special, they would have lifetime income and health benefits. Then they passed on other rules that exempted them from criminal prosecution, the same things that would get you and I in jail. Thus, they became millionaires. In the old days, the three parties were able to put aside their differences. In fact, their diversity of views often resulted in a better outcome than either party had thought of. Like in the theater, they often expressed their views that were dictated by their party affiliation. It was so prevalent that they had a special name for it: showboating. The funny thing is, after a day of vigorous debate on the floors of Congress, later out of the public sight, they often got together for cocktails and said, "How are we going to fix this problem?" They may not even have liked each other, but they recognized they had a job to do, and it wasn't to become a millionaire. Today, the parties are controlled by unelected officials. Actually, both parties are controlled by the same interests. Their main goal is to perpetuate their members as the majority in Congress. They engage in subversive activities to do this. Instead of trying to find the most qualified individual to solve our problems, they conspire to restrict the voter's choice. Today, we know too much about everybody. Market research, coupled with psychology and computers, lets us predict how people in any district or street will vote. So they draw up voting districts at the state level that favor the incumbents. People everywhere are rebelling. That's why they call it, when they rigged the voting districts for one of the parties. A byproduct of that is to ensure that the other party can't get elected. I'm reasonably sure Thomas Jefferson didn't have that in mind. But that's only one tactic. Bad as it is, it's not the worst. Patronage is the practice of giving people jobs in government to ensure their vote. It's one of the biggest reasons why there is so much waste in government. In just the last 2 years, the government has expanded at a frightening pace. If you ever worked for a big company, you know how inefficient they are. Many of these things happen because no one is accountable. There are many theories on why the government doesn't hold anyone accountable. In all likelihood, there isn't one single reason. But think about it. If someone does you a favor or buys you a gift, how likely are you to criticize them? This is another practice to limit participants in the election process. To run for office can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Why do these ordinary citizens that we send to Washington get the money to run? There are many different ways. It's true, there are parties, vacations, events, and probably some cash here and there. But today, it's become big organized business. Let's say the lobbyists pay out a few $100 million to our representatives. What they get in return is rules that are destroying our country and cost you and me billions. Greed and deception of Wall Street has caused the problems we're facing today. Does it not seem amazing to you that no one went to jail over the housing fraud? No one was even charged. The parties again were responsible for this. Wall Street knew that they were untouchable because they bought and paid for that protection. Remember 9/11? What kept Wall Street honest before then was an army of U.S. IRS agents trained in detecting financial fraud. After that horrific event, the IRS transferred that army of agents to track down and stop the funding of terrorists. That was absolutely the certainly right thing to do. It's what happened next that allowed Wall Street to get away scot-free. Deregulation in Washington does not work. When the FBI made the budget request to replace these financial agents, under the guise of deregulation, it was refused. When it was critically obvious that things were wrong, Congress refused to do anything to safeguard the public's interest. Can deregulation work? Not without accountability. I've been a businessman most of my adult life. Often I wished for deregulation and rejoiced when it happened. Remember when the top tax rate was 90%? How misguided was that? Penalties should always outweigh the advantages. Fines should be some multiple of what they earned by cheating. If I had my way, it would be 10 times. Using Medicare as an example, every part of our medical system is corrupt. IBM designed a computer system to end Medicare fraud. Congress rejected it. Medical fraud in just one city in the United States, Miami, Florida, is estimated at a minimum of $60 million a year. Why is it the people we hired to stop it can't? These firms are supposed to be preventing medical fraud, don't. Why? Because nothing happens to them if they don't. It's strange because when I hire someone to do something, I don't pay them if they don't do it. In Washington, you would probably get a raise. Can America survive? I'm sure you knew most of this before watching this video. The question is, how do we fix it? By ignoring the problems in Washington, we allowed big business to take over our government. Join the millions of other Americans to take back control over government. Find out more at canamericasurvive.com and subscribe to this channel for future in-depth analysis of what went wrong.